Did you ever notice how the human race breaks down into two basic camps? You got your makers and your takers, your creators and those who corrupt their creation. You got your everyday people and those who see us as prey. We and they. Now, I can't speak for you, but I'm not a human resource. I'm not a sheep and I'm not a serf either. But what I aspire to be is a weapon in the hands of my creator, taking aim at these false shepherds and technocratic enslavers, those who take pleasure snuffing out our divine nature, like a succubus sucking us, mooching off our labor, televising rituals to shape our behavior, pitting race against race, sowing envy amongst neighbors and everyday people, sacrificing blue-collar nation builders to the god of globalism. For the first time in memory, we, the parents, will have had it better than our children. I guess even in a service economy, you can't serve two masters. E pluribus unum. It really means there's not a dime's difference between the two of them. Demo-Republican con men, pedophiles and perverts with Baphomet's sigil upon them. And that's why they can still buy and sell. But it's a pity that they sold their souls so cheaply, because only scarce things truly hold value. And that means that being strong, straight, and true must be priceless. The only way the Cyclops can rule us is if we the people remain sightless. And that's why the Mockingbird media sings so seductively. They want to keep us eagles flightless and make us subordinate the Son of Man to vultures and vipers. Eli, Eli, please help your people fight this. What's going on, party people? Robert Jenkins here, coming to you live. Coming to you pre-recorded. I always want to say live, but I'm coming to you pre-recorded from Moon Mind Production Studio. I'm sitting here right now in the seat Perilous, and that poem that I just performed for you was called A Psalm Against the Succubae. Now, I want to clarify something at the outset, too. When I say psalm, in no way am I implying that I'm some sort of anything hoity-toity, holier than thou type, but I'm using that in the literal sense of the word psalm. So the word psalm, as I understand it, is a poem, usually oftentimes set to music, recited in the spur of the moment to the Lord, basically. So that's what that is. I wouldn't call it a proper poem per se, but it is definitely a spoken word piece, which, as far as I could tell, that if this was 2,000 years ago, we would call a spoken word piece a psalm, especially if it was a freestyle. You know what I'm saying? This wasn't freestyle. Maybe one of these days I'll drop something off the dome on top of on the microphone. But let's say for now, let me stick to the written. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's a psalm in the sense of it's a spontaneous, poetic recitation, poetic creation, a cry out to the Lord. And that term succubi, if you're not familiar with that, what that is, coming, I think, from probably Greek mythology, or I don't know exactly where it comes from, but a succubus was thought to be a female spirit which would attack unaware sleepers, usually men, at night, and it would lay on top of them and suck their breath and life spirit out. Even in some cases thought to have sexual intercourse with men at night. So it's an evil female spirit that would attack you and lay on you and suck your life essence out. So when I'm talking about a psalm against the succubi, then breaking down the title, this is a poetic creation, utterance, recitation, crying out to the Lord for help against this evil, basically female spirit that's laying on us, sucking our substance. You know what I'm saying? And some of my influencers writing this poem, the first line or two, I say, the human race breaks down into two basic camps, makers and takers, creators and those who usurp their creation. When I say the human race breaks down into two basic camps, that comes from a quote essentially by a science fiction writer named Robert Heinlein. Pretty good author, man. I like quite a bit of his stuff. Moon is a Harsh Mistress. There's a ton of good books that he wrote. And Matter of fact, Starship Troopers was one of his books that he wrote, that short stories or whatever that was adapted into a movie. So he's got a lot of good science fiction. Anyway, he's had a kind of a libertarian or freedom bent to his nature, freedom oriented nature. And of course, this is the North Star podcast, and so that's exactly what we're talking about. I'm focused on freedom. You know what I'm saying? In all endeavors, always toward freedom. And so when I'm talking about the human race breaking down into two basic camps, that's really what it is, man. You look at it, you got people like me who really just want to be left alone to use talent and skills to live my life and try to make a living for myself and my family. And you got other people out there who want to control people, and they think that usually they end up being politicians, but they don't always have to be politicians. They can be people in all walks of life and all endeavors of human business and human existence, all endeavors, all walks of life. But they want to control you. And that's really, even though I wrote this 4 or 5 years ago, it's funny how it's coming to a head even more now than when I wrote it. So we see these, certain politicians, like, for example, I'm thinking of Beto. That guy kills me, Beto O'Rourke. For y'all that don't know, Beto, the word Beto, what he's trying to claim there, he's trying to claim some Mexican authenticity. So when you use the word Beto, it comes from when you have the Spanish name that ends in Berto. Like, my name is Robert, so in Spanish it's Roberto. You also have variations of those names like Humberto, Norberto, all those Bertos. So when you have a name like that, Roberto, Humberto, Norberto, back home they would call you Beto for short. So you would be like Uncle Robert, it'd be Tío Beto. Tío Roberto, for short, Tío Beto. So that's what Beto is doing. He's trying to claim that, tap into that Mexican authenticity, but I ain't gonna call him Beto because his name is Robert O'Rourke. But this is the cat, Robert O'Rourke, talking about makers and takers, people who want to control you. He's talking about taking all AR-15s, and I can't even bear to read the dang articles about him because it's like, please, you're going to take people's weapons who haven't done anything to anybody. You're going to take law-abiding citizens' guns. You're going to go, he even said, yeah, we're going to confiscate them. I think he's saying we're going to go door to door and take them. Really? That's who you are? That's what you think's going to happen? So that's what I'm talking about when I say the human race breaks down into two basic camps. It's basically people who want to live their lives and create things for themselves, their families, their communities, and people who want to live off of us. Those succubi, the succubus, the female spirit that wants to mooch off of you and control you and suck off of you and live off of you. It's a parasitic nature. That's what I'm talking about. So when I say the human race breaks down in the two basic camps, makers and takers, everyday people and those who see us as prey, we and they. And that's why I say I can't speak for you, but I ain't down with that. I don't want to take nothing from you, but at the same time, I don't want you taking nothing from me. I wish everybody all the best, and I want all the best for you. I realize that when each individual can do everything that they can do to live their lives in as much freedom as possible, with as much liberty as possible, that means that individual's life is better, which means that his family's life is better, which means that his community's life is better, which means that his city's life is better, which means that his state's life is better, his country's life is better, the world is better. But it all starts with the individual. And that's why I can't stand these takers. We're the makers, they're the takers. They're all collectivists. They don't want to hear nothing about you as an individual. They don't even think you as an individual count. That's why they always talk in terms of groups. Women, blacks, transgenders, this, that. They don't ever talk in terms of individuals. Well, individuals make the world go round. God created each one of us as an individual. God knows so much about us as individuals. He said he knows the number of hairs on our head. You know what I'm saying? So when these cats talking about in terms of groups and collectivism, they're actually anti-God, which is basically Satanists. You know what I'm saying? And I touch on that later in the poem when I call them Baphomets. They got Baphomet's sigil or magical symbol upon them. So anyway, I go on in this poem and say, I'm not a sheep or a serf. I would like to be a tool in the hands of my creator. And that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to reach out and form some kind of bond with whomever may be listening or reaching out, trying to find me. I'm trying to find you too. You know what I'm saying? Two individuals in the darkness reaching out, trying to spark some light, trying to find some common ground. But you can only find common ground as individuals. You can't find common ground as groups, because that by definition, groups are composed of multi-individuals. You don't have nothing in common except for stuff that you can't control. Your skin color, your gender, your sex. I ain't going to use their terminology. We used to call it sex. You got your age, all these things. You can't control that. You didn't make it and you didn't do it. But that's how they want to group you. They want to group us together. These succubi, these female spirits that suck off of us. They want to group us together because we're easily herded, like sheep. You can't control individuals like cats. You can control herds of animals, herds of subhuman animals. Human beings should not be herded and grouped. When you get together in a herd or a group, you lose your individual worth, your individual mind, your individual values, your individual autonomy and willpower. Well, these people that are above us, these succubi, they know this. And this is why they talk to us in the terminology that groups us together and make us identify with groups instead of as individuals. So I'm saying I don't want to be in a group. I want to take out these technocratic enslavers. And that's what they call themselves, by the way. You can read their books. They call themselves the technocrats. People who use technology to rule us. I say they take pleasure snuffing. I want to be used against these false shepherds and technocratic enslavers, those who take pleasure snuffing out our divine nature like a succubus sucking us, mooching off our labor. Yeah. And I say, what's next? This is pretty interesting, too. If you never heard about this, I think it's pretty interesting. I said, they are the ones who televise rituals to shape our behavior, and they pit race against race, sowing envy amongst neighbor and everyday people. That's that part where I say televising rituals to shape our behavior. There's a site out there, a website. I urge you to check it out if you want to see some mind-boggling stuff. And it's called Vigilant Citizen. I think it's vigilanttcitizen.com. And I've been reading this cat for, oh man, seemed like it must be almost 10 years now. And he talks about, man, he just blows your mind. He'll peel your wig back if you actually look at it and think about it. So he talks about when you see these award shows like the Grammys and the VH1 award, I don't know, the Video Music Awards and the Oscars and Emmys and all these big award shows, Super Bowl halftime shows, anytime they have millions of eyes watching something, the people who are doing these shows are scripting them according to ancient pagan rituals and sometimes Masonic rituals. And this ain't no, what you call that? This ain't no Illuminati beat bullcorn. This is just like, so on this website, he'll show you a picture, a still shot from like the VMAs. And he'll have, I don't know, Taylor Swift or somebody. I'm not even 100% sure who that is. I don't listen to that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? I listen to that old school. But it'll have somebody like Taylor Swift or Beyonce posed as in a red dress in the middle of a court with a checkerboard floor and people dressed a certain way, standing around them in a certain way. Excuse me. And he'll just take a still shot from that and show you that picture. And then he'll go back, this Vigilant Citizen, vigilanttcitizen.com, he'll go back and show you engraving or an illustration from a book from 1408 written by shadowy figures telling about Masonic rituals. And you'll be like, yo, whoever made this VMA Video Music Awards dance set with Beyonce definitely looked at this picture, because this still looks exactly like this picture. And that's not an accident. There's no such thing as coincidences. Ain't no coinky dinks. When you see something like that, when you see Beyonce or Taylor Swift or somebody, what's that other crazy, well, I won't say that. What's that other Miley Cyrus, people like that. When you see them acting out a portrait or a tableau from some ancient Kabbalist text or ancient witchcraft text or ancient satanic devil worshiping textbook, when you see them sitting in a set on a stage looking exactly like a picture out of that book, down to minute details in some cases, well, let's just say you'd be a fool not to believe when they show you what they doing. They telling you what they doing. I mean, you know what I'm saying? That's what I'm talking about, using rituals to shape our behavior. So they have the eyes of millions of people glued upon their television screen watching this ritual, not even knowing that they watching a ritual. It's called being processed. You being inducted into their belief system without even knowing it. That's what I'm talking about right there. Using rituals to shape our behavior. Some say 9/11 was a ritual like that too. You do this whole the killing of JFK too. You do all these traumatic things in plain sight, and you show it over and over again, and you warp people's mind and cause them to form a double consciousness, an alter ego, or something like that. Y'all seen that movie? What is it? Switch? It's not Switch, is it? It's the beginning. Split. That's what it's called, Split. The beginning of that trilogy of Glass, where the M. Night Shyamalan, you know what I'm talking about. M. Night, what's his face? But yeah, so when I say these cats are using rituals to shape our behavior and pit race against race, sowing envy amongst neighbors and everyday people, sacrificing blue-collar nation builders to the god of globalism. For the first time in memory, the parents will have had it better than their children. I guess even in a service economy, you can't serve two masters. Yeah. All this stuff that they have been doing for 20, 30 years, 40 years or more, all this globalism, all this I'm a citizen of the world, not a citizen of the United States, all that old nonsense, it seems like it's geared toward breaking down our national borders and boundaries and creating at the risk of sounding cliche, a one world government. But that's not me saying that. That's them saying that. All you got to do is look up that phrase and see who actually says it. They always want that. That's what the European Union is. The European Union started off in like 1940. People think it just happened in, I don't know, like 2000 or 99 or when it was. That was the 50th anniversary of it. It started off in like 49, and all it was allegedly an agreement between the nation of Europe on how to ship beef back and forth and with low taxes or something like that. And then 50 years later, they announced the 50-year anniversary of the European Union. And you're like, what? Where'd that come from? I thought it just started this year. No, it started 50 years ago with that treaty. I forget what that treaty is called, but they signed a treaty. It's basically the same thing how a few years ago you were hearing about NAFTA and GATT. And President Trump is talking about getting us out of NAFTA and GATT because they're bad deals for the U.S. and our economy. Well, that's what these are. These are preliminary steps towards making a North American Union. And what they want to do is make a global economy, one world religion, all that kind of stuff. I mean, they say this. I don't say this. I just read their stuff and repeat it. And the sad thing about it is all of us blue collar workers out here, us regular everyday people with regular jobs, they sacrifice our standard of living for these pie in the sky alleged socialist utopias that they plan to build. And really all they're doing is centralizing power over us and then over each nation and then over the planet. That's the goal. But that never works out for us. It's never worked. The United Nations, all that old pie in the sky stuff, you have to let individuals operate freely with their own given minds, intellects, bodies, and skills to make a living for themselves. That's freedom. That's the free market. It's the greatest system that ever existed. I was listening to a podcast the other day. I think it was Jordan Peterson. He was quoting somebody else. This is a guy who does these surveys, and they have discovered that just within the last few years, we have almost eradicated poverty on the planet. Cut it in half by 50%, I think. Usually when you cut things in half, that's 50%. So we cut poverty by 50%. We live in the best times that this planet has ever seen. Everybody on this planet, even the people that live in poor countries, are wealthier and better off than any group of human beings has ever been in any time before this. And yet they keep us pitted against each other by talking about sexism and racism. And we got to come together to fight this and fight that and climate change and all this stuff. When all it is it's a con geared toward subjugating us and enhancing their power over us. So that's what I'm talking about in that line where I say, for the first time in memory, the parents will have had it better than our children, because this is about as good as it's going to get, I think, unless we stop letting them have their way with the economy and lead us astray and pull us around by our noses. And I say, even in a service economy, you can't serve two masters. E pluribus unum really means there's not a dime's difference between the two of them. Demo Republican con men, pedophiles and perverts with Baphomet's sigil upon them. Yeah, I already talked about that. I think they ultimately serve Satan. And I don't mean to say Satan like in some silly religious country bumpkin way, thinking that there's this, dude with horns and hoofs. chilling down in Hades, whispering in people. But then again, I'm not arrogant enough to think I know exactly the nature of anything. All I do know is that there is a spirit of righteousness in the world, a godliness that goes, in one direction, rotates clockwise, and then there's another force, another spirit that rotates counterclockwise. It goes against that. Now, you can call that one God or the way, the Tao, whatever you want to call it. Well, when the other one rotates the opposite direction and fights against the godly, righteous way, what is that? That's what I call Satan. And that's what I'm talking about. They chilling up here with Baphomet's sigil upon them. You ever notice how they get so wealthy? All the people that rule over us are wealthy and powerful. Well, in the Bible, it says that, I think it says Satan is the Lord of this world. And they tell you straight up they worship Satan. Again, check that vigilantcitizen.com out, man. The vigilant citizen be breaking it down. You know what I'm saying? But, after that, I say, even though they have Baphomet's sigil upon them, that's why they can still buy and sell. Well, they're engaged in fractional reserve banking. They're sitting at the top of the pyramid, so they get the first use of money. So they're, of course, some of the wealthiest people in society. And another thing that happens with them is they get income from financial services, and they collect interest. So regular people like you and I that work every day and try to stretch out a little bit and enjoy ourselves a little bit, and you may have credit cards and some debt and stuff like that. Well, the people that rule us live off that debt. That's why they can still buy and sell. They're usury, and they have Baphomet's sigil. The sign of the devil is what I'm saying. They have Baphomet's sigil upon them. But I said, it's a pity that they sold their souls so cheap, because only scarce things hold value. That means being strong, straight, and true is priceless. And you can take that how you want to take it. Y'all heard what I said on that. The only way a Cyclops can rule is if we the people are sightless. And I said that's why the mockingbird media sings so seductively to keep us eagles flightless. Now, what I'm talking about there is, again, going back to the way the media keeps us divided, keeps us looking at nonsense instead of thinking about reality. And instead of teaching us things that we really need to know, all they do is harp on things that keep us angry and at each other's throat. That's how the Cyclops rule. They only got one eye, the one eye at the top of the pyramid, some might say. That's a symbol of the Egyptian god Horus, who was in league with, diametrically opposed to Set, which is where we get Satan, Set and Satan. But what I'm getting at there, I said the Mockingbird media. Now, if you don't know, look up Operation Mockingbird. Operation Mockingbird was a allegedly past CIA program where they actually had CIA agents in place on the various big networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS. It's supposedly back in, I think the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Then allegedly it's over, but I don't know. I think anybody with eyes to see and ears to hear can look at what's going on in the media today, the way they have one drum beat all going in a certain direction, all against President Trump. And I'm not supporting the guy. I'm just saying, look at what they're doing. You have to wonder whether Operation Mockingbird is actually over. You know what I'm saying? That's why I say supposedly it's a defunct CIA program. Yeah, it's defunct because they changed the name of it. So it don't exist no more because they changed the name. But they sing so seductively. These mockingbirds sing so seductively so they can keep us eagles flightless and make us subordinate the Son of Man to vultures and vipers. And then at the end, the last line, I say, Eli, Eli, please help your people fight this. Now, Eli, if you're familiar with the Bible, when Jesus was on the cross, he was up there in pain, slowly giving up the ghost. And he said, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which being translated saying, it means, Father, Father, why have you forsaken me? So that's where I kind of got that line from. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the breakdown of my psalm called A Psalm Against the Succubae. Hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, I'm going to see if I can work with, get some emails sent out, get some invites put out so I can get some other poets and other talented people on the show as guests, so I don't have to bore you with my voice all the time. We can bring in some second additional points of view, some additional perspectives on things. Again, thank you for joining me. I'm Robert Jenkins. This is the North Star Podcast, and I want to bid you good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever it may be, and say 2 digits.